In today's video, I'm going to be ranking who I think are the top 20 defensive players in the NBA right now going into the 2021-22 season. This has kind of been a hot topic recently among the NBA community, going through who we think are the top defenders, so I'm going to give my opinion on it today. And I also want to throw a little twist on today's video. So if you guys consistently watch my channel, you know that I always factor in stats into a ton of analysis and rankings and everything, but I'm actually not going to use any stats at all in today's video. Is because a lot of defensive stats I really find pretty inaccurate. The only really one that I find accurate is defensive field goal percentage, and even that one is situational. For example, a defensive field goal percentage is going to be higher for a big man because they're defending in the paint more often than not. So I'm actually not going to use any stats in today's video. I'm going to base my defensive rankings solely off of the eye test and what I've seen from actually watching NBA games. So that being said, let's get straight into the video. Number 20 on the list, I've got Mikal Bridges, and especially throughout the playoffs last season, Mikal showed how good of an all-in-ball defender he really is, holding his own against guys like Chris Middleton in the finals, Paul George in the Western Conference Finals, and even in the first round, sometimes guarding LeBron James one-on-one and somewhat neutralizing him as well. Mikal really showed how good of an all-in-ball defender he is. He can defend in the post, he's versatile too, can pretty much defend effectively 1 through 4, uses his length to his advantage when he's defending on the perimeter, and also does a really good job on closeouts, leaping out to effectively contest threes. The only reason he's not ranking a little bit higher is he's not very strong and not a very good interior defender, but other than that, he's definitely a top tier defender in the NBA. Number 19, I've got DeJounte Murray, and DeJounte's defense has improved every single year of his career. He's becoming more and more of a clamp god as his career goes on, and he's always doing a great job of taking on the task of guarding the other team's best player one-on-one if they're a guard. Like, if there's a guard on the other team who's the other team's best player, DeJounte is absolutely going to take on the task of guarding them, clamping them up throughout the night, and he also has a very good defensive IQ, has great instincts, and has very good hands, gets a lot of steals and deflections, and overall is a very good perimeter defender. Because he's not very switchable and can't guard the interior very well, I can't put him that high, but he's definitely a top 20 defender with his amazing perimeter defense. Number 18, I've got Fred VanVleet, and I truly think that Freddie is at some point in his career definitely going to make an all-defensive team. He's an extremely underrated defender by fans across the community. I mean, one-on-one, I think we all should know how good of a defender he is. He can constantly guard the other team's best guard night in and night out one-on-one. He does a very good job on closeouts, is switchable too. Don't let the fact that he's only 6 feet tall fool you from just how good of an interior defender he is. He's one of the best guards in the league at defending in the post, and has very, very good hands, and is one of the best, if not the best in the league at getting deflections, at getting steals, and allowing that to lead to offense as well. Freddie is a very underrated defender and absolutely deserves to be on this list. 17, I've got Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy's another one of those guys who has the height of a guard, but can pretty effectively guard pretty much anyone on the floor. Obviously does a fantastic job with his lateral quickness, moving on the perimeter and being able to defend guys out there, and defending drives very effectively as well from guards moving towards the rim, but also does a really good job guarding in the post, just like I mentioned with Fred VanVleet, and like I said, can pretty much guard anyone on the floor. The only reason he's a little bit lower than you might expect is sometimes Jimmy does a really good job of getting steals, but he does gamble a lot, and sometimes this can go against him, but other than that, he's still one of the better defenders in the league for sure. Number 16, I've got Joel Embiid, and Joel could be as high as the top 8 on this list. He could be as low as outside of the top 30. That's just how inconsistent his defense is, but I have him ranking here at 16. A lot of the time he can be a very, very good interior defender, one of the best post defenders in the league, and when he's giving it 100% effort, he can switch onto the perimeter too, and effectively guard guards on the perimeter, which is insane considering how heavy he is and how tall he is at 7 feet tall, but he can do a really good job of that. At times though, he does get lazy defensively, and that's why he's not ranking in the top 10 of this list, like you might think if you watch his good nights only. His defense is really inconsistent. It's all about effort out there for Joel Embiid, but when he's giving it his all for sure defensively, he's absolutely one of the best defenders in the league. Number 15, I've got Nerlans Noel, and for those of you that don't watch Noel actually play, this might seem really high, but I definitely think he's a very underrated defender. He's absolutely one of the best shot blockers, rim protectors, and overall interior defenders in the NBA. He does a fantastic job of guarding the pick and roll, and is switchable and can can defend very effectively on the perimeter against smaller guards as well. He's also a very good off-ball defender, constantly doing very well in rotations, help, and he pretty much does everything pretty well defensively. The only reason he's not ranking a little bit higher is he's not playing against some of the greatest competition like some of the other guys I have ranking higher on this list, but Nerlens is absolutely still at least a top 5 defensive center in the NBA right now. If he continues to get a little bit more minutes with the Knicks, he could rank as high as the top 10 as early as next year. Number 14, I've got Marcus Smart, and we all know what Smart is about defensively. He's really that typical scrappy type of player who is always going to get right up in you, can pretty much defend anyone on the floor, a very good perimeter defender, a very good interior defender, uses his strength to his advantage, and has a very high defensive IQ. He did get a little bit worse defensively this year, and that's why he's not ranking as high as he would last year. I think he did get a little bit less quick this year, sometimes gets beat off the dribble a little bit more often than not, and because of this he's ranking not as high as he did last year, but still definitely in that top 15 with everything else that I mentioned. Number 13, I've got Lu Dort, another guy who I think is pretty underrated defensively. I mean, he's truly one of the best one-on-one defenders in the NBA. We saw this year how he was able to effectively guard LeBron James, last year how he was able to effectively guard James Harden, and these are just some of the very many examples of how Lu Dort effectively guards the other team's best player night in and night out. He's an amazing on-ball defender, has great quickness, very good on his toes, good defensive instincts, and on the perimeter he's an absolute beast. I mean, his Instagram handle is Lou the Beast for a reason. He can fight through any screen that he wants to on the floor, and really the only reason he's not ranking higher is again how he's not tall enough to be an effective interior defender, but still, like I mentioned with some other guys in this video, he can defend the post pretty well. Lu Dort could be definitely as high as the top 10 in this list, and I think he's a really underrated defender. Number 12, I've got Miles Turner, and Turner, in my opinion, improved a ton defensively last season. The season before that, I thought a lot of the times he could actually be a defensive liability when you put him in certain situations, but this year improved his pick and roll defense a ton, is one of the better interior defenders in the NBA right now, and arguably the best shot blocker in the league currently. I mean, he sometimes has a little bit of trouble switching onto the perimeter, but his good interior defense and pick and roll defense alone should get him as high as 12 on this list. I still think he's slightly overrated defensively just because a lot of people will see that he's leading the league in blocks and automatically think he's a top 5 defender, which is obviously not the case, but I do give him credit. He's improved a lot defensively this year. Number 11, I've got Mattise Thybulle, and I'm glad Mattise is getting more and more recognition as being potentially a top 10 defender in the NBA. He's truly one of the best on-ball defenders right now. He has all the tools you need to be a clam god. He has very good hands, great instincts when guarding on ball, can easily get steals if his opponents makes any type of slip-ups, and on ball he's just clearly one of the top 10 defenders in the NBA. I still think he can improve his switchability and his off-ball defense just a little bit, and that's why he's not ranking as high as maybe some people have him, but just as on-ball defense alone is simply turning into one of the best in the league, and he has to be as high as this in my opinion. Number 10, I've got Kawhi Leonard, and okay, I know this is probably my most controversial ranking of the video. Kawhi is not nearly the same defender as he was when he was with San Antonio, but some people are overreacting and having them out of their top 20, for example. I completely disagree with this. I still think, I mean, if you were to take the regular season only last season, Kawhi probably wouldn't even be in the top 15, but when he wants to turn it up, he can still be one of the best defenders in the NBA, especially on ball. I mean, he can do anything guarding on ball at the best level in the entire league, and we saw specifically in the playoffs last year for a really good example how he was guarding Luka Doncic. He was able to contain him way better than any of his teammates, and has also proved, especially in the playoffs last year as well, how good of an off-ball defender he still is. He helps at exactly the right time and can get a lot of steals this way as well and really help out his team's defense, and is still really good on rotations. I understand he's not the clamp god that he was with San Antonio, and I know this is a hot take, but I definitely still think that Kawhi Leonard has a very strong case to be a top 10 defender. Number 9, I've got OG Anunoby, and OG is probably the most versatile defender in the NBA. He can guard extremely well on the perimeter, and on the interior, he's one of the best undersized interior defenders in the entire league, standing at about 6'8" right now, but being able to defend centers better than some centers in the NBA, and that's just absolutely insane. I mean, OG is one of the rare guys that can really effectively guard any anyone on the floor 1 through 5, and especially because of this and how he's a pretty good off-ball defender as well, I think he definitely has to be in the top 10 here. Number 8, I've got Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is probably either the best or the second best perimeter defender in the NBA right now, but the reason I have him lower than a lot of people do is I think he's a little bit of an overrated interior defender. I mean, his size can fool you a little bit. He's not as good as an interior defender as you might think, and in terms of his off-ball defense, it's a little bit overrated as well. But because Ben Simmons is still the very best perimeter defender in the league, he still definitely has to be in the top 10. I mean, he was in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation for a pretty good reason, and while interior defense is still the most important, Ben Simmons is so good on the perimeter defending that he still has to be in the top 10. 7th, I've got Clint Capella, and Capella showed specifically in the playoffs last year that him being snubbed from the all-defensive second team was absolutely the wrong decision. He's probably a top 3 rim protector and interior defender in the NBA, and the Hawks' entire defense is surrounded by him and his amazing interior defense and pick-and-roll defense. The fact that he's not versatile does have to factor in a little bit to this ranking, but his interior defense alone, which is his only main job defensively, and it holds his entire defense intact, is why he has to rank at least 7th on this list for me, and he has a very strong case to be in the top 5. 6th, I've got Jrue Holiday, and for some of you guys this is going to seem really high, especially because Jrue Holiday is a perimeter defender, and as I've mentioned multiple times throughout the video, interior defense is more important. But Jrue's perimeter defense and on-ball defense was just insane, and it was the #1 reason in my opinion why the Bucks were able to win the championship. I mean, in the first round doing a good job of guarding Jimmy Butler at times, in the second round guarding all of the Nets' big 3 pretty effectively, including Kevin Durant, who is 7 feet tall and still the best scorer in the NBA, doing a very, very good job of guarding Trae Young in the Eastern Conference Final, and in the NBA Finals switching between Chris Paul and Devin Booker and guarding both of them very effectively as well. I mean, sometimes Devin Booker would go off and sometimes Chris Paul would go off, and no one was realizing that the reason that was is because they weren't guarded by Jrue Holiday. He's one of, if not the very best on-ball defenders in the NBA, and specifically his incredible playoff performance has to get him this high in my opinion. And Jrue Holiday is still remaining underrated because of sometimes his inconsistent play on the offensive end of the floor, but people really do have to open their eyes and realize just how good of a defender he really is. And like I said, he's not an interior defender, but he does his job defensively better than anyone in the entire league. Number 5, I've got Draymond Green. Draymond still probably has the highest defensive IQ in the league. He runs his team's entire defense, can effectively guard 1 through 5, a great on-ball and off-ball defender, and has really done this throughout his entire career. I do think he's slightly worse physically, as he was kind of in the prime of his career in 2016 when he was quite easily the best defender in the NBA, and just the fact that the 4 guys I ranked ahead of him are incredible interior defenders, have to rank him just here at 5, and this still might seem a little bit low, but that's my opinion. I think the 4 guys ahead of him are just slightly better defensively right now. Like the guy I'd have a number 4 in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Giannis showed throughout this entire season in the regular season and postseason why he's easily still a top 5 defender, and how he won the Defensive Player of the Year last year for a good reason. An incredible shot blocker, one of the best in the league at getting back in transition defensively. He can guard anyone 1 through 5, a very good perimeter defender, can move his feet better than kind of almost anyone in the entire NBA playing at the center or power forward position, and he's very versatile and overall does a fantastic job doing pretty much everything defensively. Number 3, I've got Bam Adebayo, and it was an extremely tough decision deciding between Bam and Giannis, but Bam's amazing versatility gives him a slight edge for me. I mean, still one of the best rim protectors in the NBA. I think Giannis is maybe a slightly better rim protector, but Bam is so versatile that he can switch onto the perimeter and guard some of the league's best most potent scoring guards out there on the perimeter. I mean, he can switch out there on the perimeter and guard guys like Kyrie Irving, and sometimes guard a guy like Steph Curry effectively on the perimeter just because of how versatile he is. And his on-ball defense at every position on the floor guarding is just incredible, combined with the fact that he's still one of the best post defenders and rim protectors in the entire NBA and does a fantastic job on rotations. Bam and Giannis are very similar defenders, but I think Bam is slightly more versatile, and because of this, I'm giving him a very slight edge here. Number 2, I've got Rudy Gobert, and Gobert's inability to switch on the perimeter is something that in some people's eyes holds him out of the top 3 here, but his interior defense is by far the best in the NBA, easily the best interior defender in the league in my opinion, and is an amazing pick and roll defender. Playing the Jazz defense is like playing 5-on-6 because Rudy Gobert, when he's dropping in the pick and roll, can literally defend 2 guys at once, and this is an amazing skill defensively. Like I said, his interior defense overall is just insane, and the fact that he can't switch on the perimeter shouldn't really go against him because he almost never has to. I mean, the entire season up until that game 6 against the Clippers, he didn't really even have to switch on the perimeter because of how good the Jazz's defensive system was. And if you take him off this team, I mean, you look at the personnel on this Jazz team and their defense is probably around the average stage in the NBA, but this season they had the 3rd best defensive rating in the NBA, and really, if you open your eyes, this is all because of Rudy Gobert. And because of just how good of an interior and pick and roll defender he is, and in the impact that this has towards his team, I still have to rank him in the top 2. And at number 1, I've still got Anthony Davis. AD definitely had a disappointing year this year. He wasn't fully healthy for almost all of the season, and even for the first third of the season, he was very disappointing, but only offensively. Defensively, I still think he's definitely the best in the NBA. He's a very, very good pick and roll defender, interior defender, and post defender. I'd say probably not as good as Rudy Gobert there, but he can still switch on the perimeter, so he's basically kind of like a combination of Bam Adebayo and Rudy Gobert defensively, and this is just simply insane, and AD has been doing this for pretty much the past 2 years now, pretty consistently when he's fully healthy, and I think he's going to come back this year, prove that overall he's still maybe even a top 5 player overall in the NBA, and still pretty easily the best defender in the NBA. And I think when he is fully healthy, he still pretty easily is the best defender in the NBA when you look at all of the aspects of his defensive game. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. That is my big top 20 defenders list. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you for real. You're definitely a real one. This is going to end up being the longest video I've ever made on the channel. I definitely enjoyed making it though, so thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment down below your thoughts on today's video, and I'll see you all next video.